Hi, it's Irene Weinberg, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. Before we get started with the episode, make sure to like and subscribe wherever you're listening or watching so you never miss an episode. Every week, we share heartfelt stories, spiritual insights, and practical guidance to help you navigate grief and trauma, find hope, and discover rebirth after loss. By subscribing, you'll get access to every episode and join our supportive community on this journey. Thanks for being here, and let's dive in.
Hey everyone, welcome to Grief and Rebirth podcast. And I have a really special episode for you to hear today because I'm the one being interviewed. I am Irene Weinberg. I am the host of Grief and Rebirth podcast. And I'm very proud to say that thanks to all of you, I'm very close to 1 million downloads, streaming in 100 countries, and are at the top 1.5% of 3 million podcasts, which means so many people are benefiting from the podcast, and it's helping many people to heal. And in that light, I've learned after doing this and interviewing over 400 people that we heal better when we heal together. So I have created an incredible experience for all of you. It's called SoulYOUtions, meaning it's about you. And we are going to assemble a dynamite group of premier intuitives and holistic specialists so that you can submit your questions that are going on in your life and receive a more conscious, higher view that can probably guide you in your lives and take you to a higher vibration in a way of handling your life. And I could keep going on and on and on. I'm so grateful to each one of you, and I'm so humbled by what is going on. But I cannot continue on without introducing you to my buddy, Laura Quinn, who will tell you a little bit about the amazing person who she is. And she is going to be a moderator in this new venture called SoulYOUtions. So with that note, I'm going to hand it over to Laura, and then we're going to talk about my journey to creating SoulYOUtions from the amazing spiritual awakening and the things that have happened to me, which at one time, I believed in none of it. I was a complete skeptic. And wow, has my point of view changed. So I want to share that with all of you. Hi there, and welcome to the International Award-winning Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author, and trauma survivor, Irene Weinberg, here to support you wherever you are on your healing journey. Each week, I connect with leading grief and trauma experts, intuitive healers, mediums, and inspiring voices who share powerful stories of loss, resilience, and transformation. If you're searching for hope, meaning, and a path forward after loss or trauma, you're in the right place. Together, let's rediscover joy, healing, and the possibility of rebirth. Laura, you're on. Here you go.
Hello, Irene. Not only have I known you for years and years as a friend, I have watched you literally create these inspirational platforms in authoring books, in creating the Grief and Rebirth podcast, and soon to launch SoulYOUtions Suite, which is going to be helping humanity heal. I will be a marketing moderator for that project. So a little bit about my background. I have about 40 years of experience in public affairs, public relations, branding, marketing, communications. I've worked in many roles in national and local nonprofits, including companies. But aside from my own consulting, I've served on many boards. And I met Irene through one of her philanthropic efforts where she founded and co-founded something called Good Grief, which was an organization that helped children around 9/11, losing their parents and their siblings and their loved ones, understand grief, understand the journey, because as you know better than anyone, after all the interviews you've done, Irene, death is not an ending, it's an energy shift, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But first, about your journey.
So connecting to what Laura just said, Good Grief, which I did help to found, was the reason I was so inspired by Good Grief was it was children helping children and people helping people. We created peer support for these kids who were so traumatized by the loss of their parents and their siblings and their grandparents and all. And it was amazing to see how the children helped each other. So to heal for the things that we had adults helping them to process everything and all. And that is my role model. That inspired me, part of what inspired me to create SoulYOUtions, because we are creating a community that all of you can belong to, and you will hear different issues brought up by people who are seeking guidance from these incredible intuitives and holistic specialists who I have gathered together to help you. So with that in mind, now I'm handing this back over to Laura, and go girl.
Those who know you and those who don't, you went through a profound awakening after a devastating loss. You really started to understand, like I had mentioned before, that death wasn't an ending, but like a shift in energy, a reawakening. It all started with an accident. And you were getting messages before, during, and after that accident that couldn't be mistaken for anything else but profound awakening. Tell us a little bit what the accident was about, how it happened, and what came from it.
First of all, you all need to know that I was a complete skeptic about anything that had anything to do with spirituality. I had a sister-in-law who was very spiritual. My husband and I used to laugh because we thought she was out of her mind, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But the joke was on me. 2 months before the car accident where my husband died next to me in this terrible car accident that held up traffic for 3 hours on the New York State Thruway, I was washing dishes at my kitchen sink, the skeptic that I was washing dishes at my kitchen sink, and a thought suddenly came into my head that was not my thought. And it said to me, Saul has to go. Many lessons will be learned from his death. I thought to myself, what the heck am I hearing? What am I thinking? This is crazy. And I brought a glass of water over to Saul, who was watching a Jets game on TV in our family room. I kissed the top of his head, and I thought to myself, well, if something happened to him, he's a very loved guy, and I guess whatever lessons, there would be lessons learned, I'm sure, whatever they are. But then I thought, but this is crazy. And I pushed it out of my mind. But of course, you never forget something like this. And 2 months later, found Saul and me traveling home on the New York State Thruway from a ski weekend. We had a ski house in the Catskills. And I suddenly felt our car go into a huge swerve. We'd been on the New York State Thruway about an hour and a half. We were going 72 miles an hour. And all of a sudden, it was like almost cratering to one side. And I looked over, and Saul was sound asleep at the wheel. And I looked over at him, and I said, Saulie. And he woke up. He saw what was happening. And as he did, he went to steer the car out of the accident, out of the swerve. And instead, our car started to rise up into the air. It felt like I was in a gigantic roller coaster, and the car rose. And as it rose the first time, I got another message. And the message said, he's not going to make it. You are. Okay? I flipped once. We hit really hard. The car flipped up again. And all of a sudden, I found myself out of my body. I was in this big black expanse, which I've learned and been told is the way station before you totally cross over. And I didn't know what was happening, but I wasn't in my body. I was outside my body. It was like if you pictured a clock at 11 o'clock, I flipped out of my body at like that 11 o'clock mark. And then if you picture a clock at the 2 o'clock mark, the car was flipping, and I suddenly felt myself pushed back into my body as the car continued to flip. Then we flipped the third time, and I was scrunched up in my front seat. And then we flipped the fourth time, and we landed upside down in a ravine by the side of the New York State Thruway. And I said I did not know at the time that I had 4 serious injuries that were going to cause me to have 4 surgeries, but I was completely aware. I was completely conscious, and I tuned into the first message I received, which was, Saul has to go. Many lessons will be learned from his death. And I said, I was told Saul was not going to make it. And I looked over at my husband and I said, Saulie, are you okay? And I saw that I was next to the shell of my husband, everything that made him beautiful, his personality, his sense of humor, his kindness, his generosity, all the ways that I adored him, they were all gone. I was next to just a body, the shell of my husband. But I wasn't as upset as you would have thought. I kind of took it a little bit in stride in the moment because I had gotten those messages and I instantly knew that something was up that I had never had any concept of. But who gets a message like that? And then when I lifted up into the air, he's not going to make it, you are. So I knew something, and I had been pushed back into my body. I knew something was up. And as I'm thinking these thoughts, I saw a helicopter land in front of the car, and these 3 EMTs jumped out of the helicopter, and they started rocking my car back and forth to get it right side up on the highway. And as we kind of bounced up and landed right side up, one of the EMTs put his hands through the shattered window of my car and turned me around, grabbed me by my shoulders, and started pulling me through the window of my car. And as that happened, an authoritative male voice gave me a heavenly directive, and it changed my life completely. With my husband dead next to me, I learned later that when I flipped up and left my body, he was going to the other side and transitioning. With all of that going on, I was told to be loving and kind to everyone.
Irene, it's an incredible story to tell because not only were you receiving messages as you were flipping in this car, you had heard messages months before it happened, the same sort of voices coming to you. I understand as a skeptic myself when I was younger, not even realizing how any of this was going on. I mean, what's happening in your mind? You're receiving these messages that you know somehow are coming from another place. You mentioned the black expanse. Explain exactly what the black expanse actually means. To those of us who have no idea what you're talking about. I mean, what kind of an experience was the black expanse?
I had no idea either, Laura. All of a sudden, I flipped out of the car. I mean, the car bounced. I mean, all my injuries were on my right side because the car kept flipping up and bouncing on the right side. And the second time it flipped, and I'm holding, myself tight. Think about the fact that I was in a seatbelt. And all of a sudden, I flipped into this black expanse. If my body had been with me, I would have broken through the seatbelt or something, right? But my body wasn't. My body was still flipping with the car. And all of a sudden, I was in this big black expanse. And I'm thinking to myself, where am I? What is this? I was totally conscious. I didn't know where I was or what this was. And I literally felt something suddenly come up to me, which I've been told is we all have birth guides who stay with us from the moment we're born.
In between.
And my birth guide or whatever spiritual people, connections, whatever was there, took a look at me, probably said, what the heck is she doing here? We have plans for her. She's not supposed to be going on. So, going on to the other side. So I'm just like, what is this? And I suddenly feel something literally push me, but it was my soul. And I found myself back in the body. So all of a sudden over here, I flip out. And then over here, I'm like pushed back into my body and I continue to flip.
So your near-death experience, I've always heard about what you're talking about from another realm. In other words, I've always heard that, being outside your body and being in that black expanse and being in between worlds is almost like you feel light and airy, and then all of a sudden you fall back into your body where it feels like wet, heavy clothing. The pain radiates back. You're feeling all the feelings of life instead of that ethereal lightness that you felt when you were in between worlds. When you came back around and you were back in your body, how did that translate into what your next steps were going to be?
Actually, it didn't quite yet because I was still processing everything and I was flipping. So instead of feeling like a dense expanse, which would have been my body, I was feeling like, okay, here we keep going. And it was all happening so quickly. And it was like, if you could picture, boom, up we went again, boom, up we went again. And then when we finally landed upside down, the amazing thing that happened to me, I said, oh my gosh, I got told he's going to go. There is something going on here, which is when I turned and I said, Saulie, are you okay? And I am telling you, slumped over the wheel. No,
How do you process that?
I said, okay. In the moment, I was told that he had to go. There's something up with this. And what happened was it was also in the moment, I didn't really have the chance to start grieving or anything because it was all so sudden and all happening in real time. But the major thing that happened was when they pulled me through the car and they said, be loving and kind. And that voice told me to be loving and kind to everyone.
Ominous voice.
It wasn't even ominous, Laura. It was just very strong and direct, kind of authoritative, giving me a direction. And I was like, okay, something's up. I'm being told to be, I thought I was loving and kind, but now I really you know what the change was? It made me conscious, which is what we're going to be doing with people through SoulYOUtions. I became suddenly conscious as to, all right, I got this heavenly directive. They're telling me to be loving and kind to people. Not sure I like every single human being I ever met, but I'm going to be loving and kind and be, try to be nice. And I am. And now I find myself being lifted up. They're wrapping a tourniquet around my ankle. I didn't know yet that I had a torn artery that would require 19 stitches in the artery of my foot. That was the first operation. And they're loading me into the helicopter. And now, instead of like normal people would be doing, screaming for my husband and grieving and carrying on, I said, what's your name? I know it's the weekend before Christmas. Thank you so much for helping me. Thank you. And and I'm having a conversation. I'm being so caring and loving and kind that they take me to the hospital. I'm greeted by the nursing staff and everybody. And it was so orchestrated. It was, when I look back on it, it was amazing. So they bring me in, and I don't know yet about the extent of my injuries. I'm conscious through everything though, and I'm newly very sharply aware that there's more to life than this thing that we just see. Something's a plan, something's happening, and I just got blind faith. I was like, okay, there's some kind of something going on. Now though, I go into the emergency room in the trauma center, and the doctor comes up to me and he says to me, I need to tell you that we have a lot of work to do on you. You have a huge patchwork quilt on the bottom of your foot. I did not know yet about the 2 blood transfusions I would need, all of that. And he said, I need to tell you that your husband is gone. And I said to the surgeon, I know, doc, and I'm the luckiest woman in the world that I had this man in my life. I had the sense that soul was there listening to me. And I said, I am so blessed. And then he said, what do you want me to do with your kids when they come to tell them that their dad is gone? And I said, doc, I need to be the one to tell them. And this is while they're preparing me for surgery. I said, I need to be the one to tell them, but I could sure, my background is Jewish. At the time I said, I could sure use a rabbi to hold my hand as I tell each of the kids. And he said, as a matter of fact, they found the one assistant rabbi of his synagogue to operate on you today. And as each of the kids came, he came around and he held my hand while I told each one. And there's a whole story that went on. My stepdaughter fainted, and the things I said to her when she ran out of the room, and everything was very loving, very kind, very conscious. So much so that 3 months after the surgery, I got a call from the assistant to the surgeon who had operated on me. And she said, I have to tell you something. You changed lives in the emergency room. We have seen everything happen on that throughway. We have never seen anyone be so loving and kind and not worried about herself and not screaming for herself. The way you handled everything, you taught people lessons in the emergency room, like unbelievable. So now I'm in the hospital for 3 days. 2 blood transfusions. I didn't know I had 3 more surgeries coming up in my future. And my sister-in-law, the one who I thought was crazy because she was very spiritual, right? She comes to visit me and she said, Irene, your whole aura had changed. There was something very significant about you that I could see that had changed.
Again, so profound, especially in the way that grief is so personal to everybody. Grief is so individual. and you're getting these blanketed messages that you're trying to conjugate, right? You're trying to figure out what all this means, much less how to convey to other people the lessons you're learning and help their lives with those lessons. I think since just authoring 2 books and creating this amazing podcast to do a lot of the transference of what you've learned to help other people heal is an incredible part of this journey. I want to hear more background on where you went from there, because now you're trying to understand death yourself. You're getting these messages, and now you're getting communications through mediums. Literally, Saul speaking to you. Your husband starts to give you these messages, and they're spot on. There's no way it was not him. You couldn't. You kept explaining to me at one point, my God, these were just things that no one could understand but me, who have experienced these things with him. So a divine plan starts to be hatched. One of your first 2 projects before you even got into the Grief and Rebirth podcast was that you wrote 2 books. You authored 2 books, and they're right here today. Talk a little bit about how those messages then led you to the divine plan, which led you to writing these books.
Well, first of all, Laura, I just want to tell everyone that there are many more details to the accident and all, and you are all welcome to read about them. Just get onto Amazon. The book is called They Serve Bagels in Heaven. And as to why the book is titled They Serve Bagels in Heaven, it's a really fascinating story, and you can tune in and find out on page 8 and go for more, so much more that I asked Saul for this book. I literally channeled him with a medium from the other side. But aside from that, I started going to all these mediums. I couldn't tell anyone in my world that I was doing this because I thought they would have thought Irene is cuckoo, now cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. So I started going to all these mediums, and the amazing thing, he was channeling in any way that he could through them, and none of them knew each other. Through one, I got a description of his toes. Through another one, he gave me a description of what he was wearing the night he died. Through another one, I got told the first way he kissed me.
Unmistakable confidence.
Unmistakable, it is him. Through another one, he gave me the license plate of the car I was driving that had been his car. I mean, it was like amazing. So, but the other thing that knocked me out was every single one of them was saying there was a divine plan. He's saying that you 2 have been soulmates for many lifetimes, and that you planned that if some things didn't work out for him in this lifetime, you were going to work together from both sides of the veil. Huh?
Is that how the book came to be?
That's how this book came to be. And the first assignment I got, now I'm tuned in, something is really up. I got a message, a bunch of them said, you're supposed to write a book. I'm like, what book? I had honors English in high school, and I played the violin growing up. What book? But if your husband describes his toes to you through someone on the other side,
It might be serious.
it might be serious about writing a book. So I did that. And how I knew that the information that I was getting was him, because I really was always a little skeptical, was as this medium was channeling, I would ask questions and she would channel the answers that Saul would give me.
Inexplicably him.
It was totally him. But the other thing that I knew was she was Methodist. She had never heard a word of Hebrew in her life. And in the book, people will hear, he channeled some of our past lifetimes, which are fascinating. And you can really see how a soul evolves through your past lifetimes. And as he channeled them, one of the lifetimes he told me about was that I was a little boy in a yeshiva. We haven't always been Jewish, by the way, but in this particular lifetime, we were Jewish. And he told me I was a little boy in ancient Israel, and he was my teacher. And he said, I was such a good little boy in that lifetime. And she said, I'm getting something really weird. I keep asking him what your name was in that lifetime, and I keep getting this name that's weird. It's Yeled Tov. I said, oh my goodness, Yeled Tov is Hebrew for a good little boy. And that's how I knew this was really Saul and this was really happening.
So these confirmations kept coming in the form of things that nobody else could possibly know except a medium that was that tuned in. So hence brings us today. Your Grief and Rebirth podcast is literally, it just hit 1 million viewers. I mean, throughout 100 countries. It's done fabulously well. What better than launching pad to create a venture, SoulYOUtions, Y-O-U being you in the middle, SoulYOUtions Suite, helping humanity heal with a group, a collective of intuitives. You knew from your own experience other people could heal from the same thing. Why not collect a bunch of people at once that people then could direct their questions to? Tell me a little bit more about the Solution Suite.
Well, I want to say, though, for everyone listening, that I kept getting directives. So I was a very good girl. And anyone else knowing what I was doing would have said I was crazy. I first got told to write the book. Then one day I'm out there, I'm telling my story. It's got 5-star reviews and all that. And the next thing I know, I'm being told I get the word podcast in my ear. And I said, podcast? What's a podcast? So that's how Grief and Rebirth podcast evolved, and how it's another story about how I decided who I would interview and all. Now, the next directive I got, you need to write another book. So I wrote this book called Good to the Last Drop for everyone. And I have interviewed almost 400 people. I collected about 24 stories of people in the last chapter of their lives and what they're doing to leave a legacy. And then I got this other message that I was supposed to create this community that would help a lot of people, but where Grief and Rebirth was helping people one at a time, I was supposed to create a community of people who would help each other.
And I wanted to stop you there only because you started with a book about your own experience only. Your second book was about interviewing hundreds of people, knowing that what you have experienced, you could probably help them with it. Then now we're at this sort of precipice where you're collecting all these experts. I mean, different kinds of panelists. You can go through the panelists that'll be in this organization with us, but it's literally there as a question answer 90-minute period where anybody could ask an expert in the medium intuitive world what they may want to get as an answer to their life, to their health, for the future or for their past. So explain how the panelists are going to work.
So the really cool part about this is I decided, because I've learned through the podcast of all these extra modalities that help people to heal. None of us negate Western medicine, but there are so many other forms of healing that people really don't know about. And so I thought, I'm going to gather really interesting, fascinating people who are going to be a whole new experience for the people joining SoulYOUtions, and they are going to have expertise and be able to help people from a higher view. Not just, I've had tons of therapy in my life. I've done all of that. But this is going to be where you get about 7 minutes to pose a question. And if it's not enough time for you, we will give you other options that you can continue to get more information. But you could literally get on and with your question say, I have a question for the numerologist. I have a question for the medical intuitive. I have a question we have someone who has a PhD in transpersonal psychology who is amazing. And transpersonal psychology is a combination of spirituality and psychotherapy. So she can give you the full picture. We have another person who is a trauma specialist. So if you've had an abusive childhood or you've endured trauma in your life, she can give you healing messages about that. And we're going to have astrologers. And we're even going to have someone who reads tarot. And they're all very gifted, and I have been led to each one of them. So I have to say they have the heavenly seal of approval.
Only because I've worked with you on this since January. The way I understand it as well, just to give some of the process in this, is that, when you jump on the website or register for this event or register for one of the SoulYOUtions Suite sessions, there'll be bios housed there with all the accolades and backgrounds of these panelists. So you'll have a chance to read through them. Anyone that wants to join us will have a chance to then formulate and direct a question to whomever they want. It'll be a limited time, but it'll be amazing to listen to the entire journey of everyone else that's on that session with you. And if you want your own more detailed session with somebody, you can then, book and create and schedule something with one of those panelists yourself. So it opens it up to this collective. It opens everybody up to listening and experiencing through this entire 90-minute session, and then gives you the option to learn more about yourself and learn more about some of the panelists by engaging yourself and booking your own appointments. So I think the whole journey from book to Grief and Rebirth podcast to now the Solution Suite podcast sessions, I think you're continuing to expand. and let people join you on this journey of understanding, becoming conscious from an unconscious view. We're all being elevated right now. We're always growing on our journey. Just to have something guide you along the way, what a beautiful thing to create.
And this reminds me, this likens to when I was told that I changed lives in the emergency room by the way I behaved. Anyone coming on to SoulYOutions, as we call it, which is, again, about all of you, anyone coming on to this is not only going to get an answer to their question, but they're going to learn, just like those women and the men in the emergency room, they're going to learn from other people's experiences and from the other answers they get, just like I have learned from listening to over 400 podcasts and different people's amazing experiences and how they came through trauma or what they learned from it or whatever that they did and how they transformed their lives. And I think that SoulYOutions as a community has a lot of potential to transform lives, because don't we all pass it forward? Aren't we all role models for each other? If you are learning different ways to heal and you are on a journey in your lifetime and someone can give you a heads up about your past lives or why this is happening to you or your soul purpose or any of that, that is going to be amazing. And how many more people in your world are going to benefit from what you learned?
It's funny, we already have a lot of traction and momentum with this as far as interest, because each of the panelists also has their own following. They have hundreds, if not thousands of people that have followed them. So you're talking about 1 million people that you've reached. Now you're talking about the thousands among the other panelists. We already have a created base of interested people, and there'll be a limited time for, slots or amount of slots for each session. So as we move forward, we're looking at a September launch. It's exciting what's going on. I feel like we're going to do 2 a month for 90 minutes, but there'll be a lot more as far as in the way of an explanation. The bios will be rolled out. This serves as one of many promotions to come. We'll be also interviewing the different panelists one by one or two by two, as they say. So you'll get a little window or a little insight into each one that's going to serve on this panel as we move forward. We really look forward to launching this. I think the timing is perfect with everything going on in the world. Anything else about why people should join us and why people should tap in?
Because each of the panelists are amazing. I mean, I have to say, heaven helped me choose every single one of them. And we are the only people, and they're all people who are doing their own healing work. So they have already experienced whatever they need to do to give them even more information to couple with their gifts to be able to help each of you. And
very important.
Very important. And each of the panelists, not one of them is coming from ego. We are all doing this to help raise the vibration on the planet, help to raise the vibration for each of you. And boy, do we all need this now. And just a coincidence that I got a message that this was going to help a lot of people and to do this. And here we go. It's very exciting, to tell you the truth, and very heartwarming.
It is. And the fact that you started with this so long ago, Irene, and you've already reached a point where the momentum is here, it makes perfect sense. If the success of the Grief and Rebirth podcast is what it is, it makes perfect sense and a natural progression to then launch into this collective community of experts. We look forward to launching in September. It's wonderful work, Irene. Your past and your story is incredible. Again, more of that in the book if you want all the details about the accident and the aftermath. But yeah,
you can go to Good to the Last Drop, which I plan to be. Good to the Last Drop. And the people who are interviewed here are all amazing people who have come through tremendous trauma and healed and transformed their lives. And the other thing I want to tell all of you is to be sure to fill out the registration form that is attached to the show notes that is going to be part of this interview. And you have huge treats coming up. I did an interview with the numerologist and the medical intuitive, who are amazing people. And I have another interview coming up with the trauma specialist and the transpersonal psychology PhD, very impressive. And she also reads the Akashic records. And then we are going to have another group session where you're going to love, where our whole panel is going to come together, and that's going to be focused around Laura, who's going to be our moderator, making sure that everything flows properly, that the messages get transmitted, and all of that. It is just such a blessing for each of us, and such a blessing for everyone who will be listening to
It's a privilege to be a part of it. And as we roll this out, we will have a constant flow of communication about the bios, who the panelists are, what you're to expect when you're there. Social media sites. So as we roll all this out, this is serving as a promo to get you excited as we are, to help you and to move forward. And in the words of Irene Weinberg, to be continued.
Thanks for tuning in to Grief and Rebirth. Remember, you can dive deeper into everything we've discussed by checking out the show notes and all past episodes at griefandrebirth.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our channel at Healing from Grief and never miss a video. For those of you listening, you'll find links to my 2 books, Good to the Last Drop and They Serve Bagels in Heaven, in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see those books listed right above, so don't miss out. And here comes a special treat. If you sign up for Audible as a first-time user using my link, which you can find in the show notes, you can get They Serve Bagels in Heaven for free. And finally, people often ask me what I read, what I use, and what I recommend for healing and self-care. So I've carefully curated a compilation of those items to share with you. You can head over to www.amazon.com/shop/Irene S. Weinberg to check them out. And to my cherished Grief and Rebirth podcast fans, stay tuned and see you again soon.